So let's just keep on this time travel thing. Let's just take it back a little bit further, right? I mean, 'cause again, earlier on you had said like genetically you're inclined to have Crohn's disease. So that kind of leads me to like what kind of upbringing did you like? What kind of household did you come into? I mean, what kind of kid were you? Were you one of those kids that were like a bookworm? Were you a gamer, or were you one of those kids that was sitting in the corner and you would memorize the almanac?
Yeah, good question. So I was a massive gamer growing up. I became addicted to World of Warcraft for probably, about 7 years. I could still talk about it and memorize it to this day. But I was also too, I kind of felt like I had an engineering mind. I was always building Lego and Connects and all these things that my parents would buy for me. And I remember like the age of the Lego box would say like 9 to 12 years old or 16 years old. And I was like, I don't know, 7, 8 years ahead. I really wanted to learn all this stuff. I was always into computers from a super young age. My first job, though, I was working at it's the equivalent to Best Buy. It was called Future Shop before they went out of business in Canada. And just working on a commission basis, getting into sales, interacting with people, seeing what that was all about. But both my parents, my mom was a nurse, so she had the health side down. And she was very empathetic, but my dad was on the extreme end. He was like kind of that tough love, go getter, kind of person. He was actually in the hospitality management industry. He was a GM for about 20, 25 years. And just naturally because of that, in the cities that we lived in, he just had a network of pretty high profile people throughout the city. So I just felt like because of that, I was introduced to these people from a pretty young age, which I feel very fortunate for looking back, looking at it. So I think through them, just learning the work ethic, maybe how to make money, how the system works and
Mm.
everything else. I felt like in some ways I did have that advantage. But when the Crohn's hit me, it was something that I felt like in the early stages, I had a lot of things going for me, but I didn't have that resilience to when something went bad for me. I didn't know how to adapt to that. So when Crohn's hit me, it was such a wake up call that I feel like I had to just completely relearn so many things at once, which is probably consequently like what I needed the most at the time. It's just kind of funny how the universe works sometimes in that way. So looking back, I think it was all meant to happen for that reason.
Wow, wow. So I mean, you kind of brought up your dad, and it seems like indirectly, I mean, some of your entrepreneurial insight may or may not have come from your dad. So the next question is like, do you feel that there was anyone, maybe your dad or anyone else in your bloodline or your family, that was entrepreneurs that you were watching and possibly mimicking later on?
Yeah, great question. So I was from a young age, to be honest, I really didn't like the 9 to 5 job structure. Even when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, I always just found myself coming up with like unique solutions. Like I remember building mine, like just certain video games, just building things on my own, and just whenever I had to work for somebody else or do some kind of 9 to 5 job when it wasn't something that I wanted to do, I just found myself at work all the time from a young age, whether it was like counting down the hours to go home, working on another side venture, doing like the paper route as a kid. I think I was just very self-determined that way and just a curious individual. I was also a magician from a young age. So I was doing magic tricks for people and making some money, going to my dad's hotel, doing events and stuff like that too. So that was always a side thing. People I got that from though, my dad to a degree, I think so, but he was really stuck into the 9 to 5 mentality.
Mm.
Same with every other people he knew. So I really reached out from a young age. I remember just being a teenager looking out for people. So like I remember Lopez was a really big one, like you Gary Vaynerchuk, and just all these people in the space. And then when you listen to, especially podcasting, I was listening to Joe Rogan from a very young age, Tim Ferriss going into the health space, and just all these things that break the frontier of what the conventional line of thinking is. It was just always fascinating me. And I always questioned, like, why don't other people talk about this? And I think that's what attracted me to it. And then when people said no, it just made me more inclined to say yes. And then you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And then when you look back, it's like, wow, I created this completely separate niche for myself that was really just was a reflection of my own interest.
Nice, nice. So I mean, with that, I mean, currently right now, I mean, I'm not sure how old you are, but where do you currently stand? Like you were talking about, your dad was kind of like the tough love, and your mom was a little bit more nurturing. Do you think that has any effect on where you are right now, as far as your general family life?
I would say so for sure. To be honest, I feel again very fortunate. My relationship with my parents has always been quite good. I would say when I first got into entrepreneurship, my dad was very resistant to it just because he was in that old mentality. So we definitely had a lot of friction there. But growing up with that tough love and everything, I have three younger brothers, and we would, as brothers do, we get into fights regularly. But fast forward till today, we have all great relationships. And I think, coming home after a hard day when I was a kid, I had my mom for that support, but I also had my dad to push me in that direction. You had the nurture from my mom, but then with my dad, you also had that that drive and to go get it. And I think genetically too, I have that from him a little bit as well. But I think I'm very fortunate to have that upbringing, to where that all came through. So from a young age too, as a kid, my dad would have to transfer through the hotel industry. We go to one hotel, move to one city. It was all throughout Canada, but I felt like I had to make new friends starting from scratch again and again and again. So at the time, it didn't feel great, but over time, I think that was a blessing in disguise.